And our Madeline O'Neill is following the reaction to these developments tonight. She joins us live at the state capitol with some perspective from experts.
Well, it really has been a wild day. We're still waiting to hear back from the Wisconsin Supreme Court on why they came to that decision, but there are still plenty of concerns about the election tomorrow. We were able to listen into a virtual emergency meeting with the Wisconsin Election Commission. There are concerns about absentee ballots getting to people in time, people being able to turn them in time and counting those ballots. There are also concerns about sufficient polling locations, including in Milwaukee, which usually has 180. Tomorrow, that number will be 5.
We have to be prepared for an election tomorrow.
This was the clerk after Governor Tony Evers' order to halt in-person voting.
We're trying to make sure that poll workers know to not turn off their alarm clocks just yet.
A good call, too, when just hours later, the Wisconsin Supreme Court blocked that order.
Everything in this saga is more complicated than we think.
Howard Schwaber, a political science professor at UW-Madison, says under the emergency order in our state, Governor Evers is authorized to issue orders to preserve health and property. So the Supreme Court's decision likely came from the conclusion that closing polls isn't necessary to preserve health and property, or that Evers' emergency powers don't extend to the timing of an election. With the implications the decision will have, Schwaber says, especially in Milwaukee.
It's very difficult for me not to see this as a victory of a deliberate Republican strategy of using fear of the pandemic as a way to suppress voting in the most heavily Democratic areas.
And to have a situation where, on the one hand, we're saying it's not safe to stand within 6 feet of anybody else, and on the other hand, saying show up and do your job as a democratic citizen is a uniquely perilous choice facing voters in Wisconsin.
UW-Madison journalism professor Michael Wagner says all the chaos leading up to the election can cause confusion and have ramifications at the polls.
I'm worried about huge inequalities in terms of who ends up actually turning out to vote on election day if we have to have the vote on election day. I'm also worried about the inequalities that our research has shown for Black and Hispanic voters when it comes to early voting and absentee voting.
Adding on the recent news of the U.S. Supreme Court blocking Wisconsin's plan to extend absentee ballot voting when many struggle to get a ballot in the first place, makes Schwaber wonder if those in power are taking the pandemic seriously.
If they are taking the coronavirus seriously and conceive of it as an actual, genuine threat to public health, then they're embracing a message that essentially says your vote or your life, or your vote or your health, which is a level of cold-blooded cynicism that I don't think we've seen in American politics.
There was a little bit more back and forth confusion for voters today. In Milwaukee County, officials issued a similar order blocking in-person voting. But now the Wisconsin Election Commission says Milwaukee will have polls open. The National Guard is also helping out to make sure that there is a poll site open in every jurisdiction in the state.
All right, Maddie, thank you. And the majority party leaders in the state legislature applauded today's rulings. In a joint statement, Assembly Speaker Robin Vos, Senate Majority Leader Scott Fitzgerald say the ruling affirmed the separation of powers in the Constitution. The leaders also released a statement on the absentee ballot ruling, saying the court's ruling addresses their concerns over ballot security.